Purdue and Texas Tech. It's a top 15 matchup, and it's happening tonight. Find out who brings home the Baha Mar title.
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Locked On Boilermakers here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, the number one sports podcast network where it's your team every day. I am your host. I am Nick Arvin. I cover the Boilermakers here on Locked On, and I write about them for Purdue 24/7. And Purdue, they won last night. They beat Memphis, and they will move on to the championship game tonight against Texas Tech. Today's episode is actually brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So we'll start out today's episode talking about Purdue. Is there any concern about how they played last night? And then going into Texas Tech tonight, we'll talk about that. Stick with us, Texas Tech fans, for the second segment where we talk about you guys. I have a lot of respect for this Red Raiders team, and I think that they're very good. So we'll talk about the matchups, what players give Purdue trouble, if any. And then I'll give my final thoughts and give my game prediction for the score, who wins, and who brings home that Baha Mar title. Stick with us, but let's go ahead and jump right in. And before we get started, I do just want to say, stick with me right now. It's about 3 a.m. when I'm filming this. A crazy circumstance. I was not in the Bahamas today. I was actually in Memphis for a sports media conference, and I also wanted to catch Zach Edey play at the nighttime. So I just got back driving home from Memphis. It's really late. I've got stuff to do in the morning, but you know, it's that daily grind. We're going to stick through it, and we're going to talk about the Boilermakers. So Purdue, they win, right? They win, but it wasn't a win that you look back at and you say, oh, I was overly impressed with this win, because ultimately they were neck and neck with Memphis for most of this game. They were really not able to kind of have that breakaway where there were times where Purdue, they would get up 2, 4, 6, but then Memphis, they would climb right back into that game, tie it up. And it was just kind of back and forth the whole way. And I feel like there was a lot of discourse post-game about the refs, and I do want to address that because I feel like that isn't fair. Whenever refs get brought up, and this is just in generality for all sports, if your fan base is bringing up the refs after the game, that just means that your team didn't play up to the expectations. Because if Purdue went into this game, refs or not, and they won by 20 against Memphis, they covered the spread, then I don't think that we're having the same conversations about refs. And Matt Painter said the same thing post-game. Yes, there were some questionable calls, and I'm not denying that at all. I think that it was very one-sided in terms of the officiating, but that's just the nature of the sport. And Matt Painter talked about that in his post-game press conference, where he's the referee in practices, and he's not a good one, he said, where he kind of just goes off his judgment calls. They don't necessarily have to be right, because that's how the game goes. That's how college basketball goes, and that's how this game against Memphis went tonight. Purdue, they didn't win the fouls, and ultimately, I feel like that's kind of what hurt Purdue's momentum, where they weren't really able to get outrunning. They weren't really able to get that offense clicking altogether because they were struggling. They constantly were getting themselves into foul trouble, whether deserved, whether not. I mean, the referees determined it was. So I guess that's all we can really say about it. The final total was 21 fouls for Purdue, 13 fouls for Memphis. So definitely a bit of a disparity there. But like I said, you can't really complain about it. What I do want to complain about, though, is Baha Mar, which it's fun. There were 2 good games on tonight. Purdue's game was a little bit more stressful than I wanted to see, but the court in general, you could see guys slipping and sliding. I was actually watching the game from Beale Street, so there was a bunch of like older Memphis fans. I think everyone inside of there was over the age of 60, but they had the Memphis-Purdue game on. We went to go eat before Zach Edey in that Grizzlies game, and we were watching it. Everyone in there was cheering for Memphis except for me, and they had a lot to cheer for because Memphis really was hot to start out that game, where I mean, they were just capitalizing on Purdue's missed opportunities. And I really didn't think, and it kind of bit me because yesterday I said that Purdue would have an easy win in Memphis, and that just wasn't the case. You can talk about how the rim may have not been at the proper level. I think Fletcher Lawyer said something about that post-game. You can talk about the floor being slippery, about it being a weird gym, that ballroom. There were a ton of different variables where things could have gone the wrong way for Purdue tonight, and at times it did, but ultimately they pulled it out. They get another win, and you move on to the championship game. So this game kind of reminded me of Oakland from a certain sense of you're kind of preparing in this term is kind of different from where they were against Oakland because that Alabama game was on the schedule. Purdue doesn't know that they're playing Texas Tech until after Texas Tech plays tonight. But it's one of those situations where maybe you play a lesser opponent close, and then you go into one of those ranked matchups, and then you just really impressed by the way that you're able to control the pace. I think that's certainly on the table, and we'll get to Texas Tech here in this next segment, but I don't think that we should be overly concerned. I think that there are concerning things from tonight. Braden Smith's efficiency, for one, where he, as a shot maker, just hasn't been there. He's still doing the right things, but shots just weren't going for him tonight in terms of, let me get the exact number so I got it right for you guys. He shot the ball 14 times tonight, only made 2 shots, 5 points. He did have 11 assists, so that's kind of where he affects the game. But in terms of efficiency, a lot of times Braden Smith missed shots that kind of killed Purdue's momentum, and that is on him. And he's the leader of this team, and I expect him to bounce back. But the fact that you're able to pull out a game like this, tight game, where Braden Smith, your leader, shoots 2 for 14, yes, you can look at it from a glass half empty perspective and say, well, he's not playing up to snuff. Purdue, they're playing close games against Memphis when he's not. Or you can look at it from a glass half full perspective and say, well, we beat Memphis when Braden Smith arguably had his worst shooting night, maybe of his career. What are we going to be able to do when Braden Smith is on his game? Because inevitably, Braden Smith is going to bounce back, and he's going to get back to that efficiency that he's kind of made a career off of. So you can look at it a little bit of both ways. I'm not overly concerned with Purdue because they did bounce back the way that they did against Alabama after playing Oakland. So everything that we've seen from this team this year is that they can win close games like this, and there's not necessarily a reason for us to overreact to it unless they lose a game, right? So if they play Memphis close tonight, if they go into Texas Tech tomorrow and then they just lay an egg, well, then I feel like we should have some concern. And we'll talk about that tomorrow night if that is the circumstance. However, I don't necessarily think that we are at that point. I still think that Purdue, they're playing good basketball. I think that they had an off night. I think that there were a lot of different variables. And ultimately, it's tough to play in an environment like this. It's tough to play in a ballroom setting in general. It's especially tough when you travel to the Bahamas and then you have a weird schedule. These multi-team events, they're really strange. Strange things happen. And I feel like this game was strange. Texas Tech and Wake Forest, that was a really good game. I thought that we may have Wake Forest there for a sec. Those guards, Duke Harris, he's going to be special. I think he had 27 against Texas Tech. But ultimately for Purdue, we'll finish that up and then talk about Texas Tech here next. For Purdue, I think the main takeaway is you just got to focus on tomorrow. Yes, tonight maybe didn't go the way that you wanted it. It wasn't as easy of a win as you wanted, but thankfully there's tomorrow. You have another opportunity to kind of really step out and play the game that you want to play. And you take a win as that. You're 5-0 on the season. You have an opportunity to improve to 6-0 tomorrow. And that's all that really matters. It's going to be a top 15 matchup. Some of the best matchups in college basketball. I'm talking Trey Kaufman-Renn on JT Toppin. It's going to be absolutely electric, and we're going to have that here in this next segment. We're talking Texas Tech. We're talking matchups. Stick with us. That's here next on Locked On Boilermakers. College football and basketball are back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, well, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, and prices jumping at the checkout. That's why I use Game Time. The app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices. With no surprise fees, what you see is what you pay. I love using Game Time because it's the easiest way to get into Mackey or even Ross A. They really have the best deals, and it's super accessible. And you guys can check it out too. So take the guesswork out of buying college football or basketball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Game Time today. We talk Purdue. Let's talk Texas Tech. Let's talk the matchups that Purdue's going to be facing off against tonight in the Baha Mar title game. And I mean, we have to start at the top. We have to start with this guy. And there might be 3 All-Americans on the floor tonight because JT Toppin certainly looks like that. With Braden Smith kind of struggling shooting, JT Toppin is now the favorite for the Wooden Award. I mean, he's very good. He's amazing. He's talented. And that matchup against TKR is going to be electric because these are the 2 best scoring bigs in all of the nation. JT Toppin, he really pulled it out tonight against Wake Forest. And let me give credit to Wake Forest because I think that Wake Forest is going to be an exceptional team in college basketball this year. I think that's a team that you may look at a Sweet 16 upside, really, truly, because they only lost by 1 tonight against Texas Tech. They only lost by 1 against Michigan. That's a really talented team. I'm saying watch out for Wake Forest this year. You know, Miles Colvin, Juke Harris, he's inspirational, 26 points on great efficiency tonight. But we're not talking about Wake Forest. We're talking about Texas Tech, the team that did end up getting a 1-point win. And the big reason for that is JT Toppin. And he's the reason why they get a lot of their wins because he had 21 points tonight, shot the ball 19 times, made 10 of those, over 50% from the field, 9 rebounds. And that's where he really sticks out because not only is JT Toppin Texas Tech's leading scorer, he's also their leading rebounder, similar to a guy that we have in Trey Kaufman-Renn. But JT, his stats are completely off the chains. He's averaging 24 points, 11, going on 12 rebounds, 3 assists, over 50% from the field. JT Toppin is really that guy. If you guys didn't know about him, he was an All-American last year. I'm sure most of the country knows about this guy by now. But I mean, it's factual. JT Toppin is really, really talented. He's going to continue to be talented for this Texas Tech Red Raiders team. And he's primarily the reason why they are 15th in the nation, why they have an opportunity to play against Purdue. But JT Toppin isn't as far as it goes. And I do think that Purdue will have a level of success against Texas Tech's front court. And the reason why I say that isn't because JT Toppin. I think that JT Toppin is going to give TKR everything he's got. I think that those 2 guys are going to battle it out all night long. But if you look at their second, quote-unquote, big man, in terms of their other forward that they run in their starting lineup, he's LaJohn Watts. So LaJohn, he's a junior. He averages 14 points a game, 6 rebounds. So pretty solid. He wasn't great against Wake Forest tonight. Only had 8.6 rebounds, 6 assists, but he was 1 for 9. So not the best efficiency, but what sticks out to me, yes, he's averaging 6 rebounds on the year, but 6'6" at the power forward position when you have him and JT Toppin, who is talented, but not a traditional big. Oscar Clough is bigger than JT Toppin, who I guess will technically be the matchup at center. I like Purdue's size. I truly do like Purdue's size in this one. I think that it's going to be tough to stop JT down low because I don't necessarily know how well TK or Oscar Clough are going to be able to play him on the defensive side of the ball. I think offensively, they'll be able to exploit him a little bit, but just defensively, he's so difficult to guard. I don't know how that's going to fare, but the pure size, I do think that Purdue, they're going to bounce back against Texas Tech, and I do think that they'll be able to control the glass a little bit better, kind of going back to what we saw against Alabama. I do think that maybe Texas Tech rebounds a little bit better than Alabama just because they do have a guy in JT Toppin that's averaging double-figure rebounds. But so does Purdue, and they have 2 guys right now in Oscar Clough and TKR. That's going to be a matchup to look out for, especially a guy in LaJohn Watts, who he's kind of that Jack Bitter size, 6'6", power forward. Definitely something to look out for if you're Purdue. But honestly, Texas Tech, they're pretty deep as well. And they have a ton of talent. Another guy that I want to look at. And honestly, there are some similarities between this team. We talked about JT Toppin and TKR, both of those guys being explosive on the offensive side. But Texas Tech has a guard that I'm not going to say he's at the level of Braden Smith, but he is certainly making a name for himself. And that guy's Christian Anderson. In case you didn't know, he had 16 points last night against Wake Forest, and 8 assists. That's the number that sticks out because he's averaging 9 assists, second in the country, right around Braden Smith where he's at. Christian, he is a sophomore guard, almost averaging a double-double with 19.5 points, 9 assists. This is a guy that he's having a ton of success, and the opportunity for him to match up against Braden Smith early on in the season, it's going to be a big opportunity for both of these guys tonight. And it's going to be a fun one. These are two of the best, if not the best, playmakers in all of the country. Two of the most esteemed guards. Obviously, Anderson, he's a little bit younger than Braden Smith. Still, he has time to develop, but Braden Smith being that senior guard, being that guy, that All-American playmaker that we know him to be, that's certainly going to be a fun matchup. And something to look out for is their ability to get their bigs involved down low. I really think that this game is going to run through the bigs. I think it's going to be TKR, and I think it's going to be JT Toppin banging up against each other all night long. And I think it comes down to Christian Anderson and Braden Smith to who gets their guy the best look, who gives their team the best opportunity to succeed. And while Christian Anderson is a great player, I do think that Braden Smith, if he can fix some of the efficiency issues, which that's not all that there is to his game. He had 11 assists last night, but if he's able to do that against Texas Tech, I think that he's capable of dictating the pace in a way where Purdue ultimately typically comes out on top, because Purdue, they're just so efficient on a normal basis, where when Braden Smith can control the game, I think that he's better than anybody in the country at controlling the pace of games. When he can do that at the level that he can typically do it, when he's shooting at a decent efficiency, making the plays, controlling that pace, Purdue's unbeatable almost when they play at that high efficiency. They didn't do that tonight against Memphis, but for most of the season, for most of these games, certainly against Alabama, Braden Smith was that guy. If he's able to do that, get it down low to his bigs, I think Purdue finds success. However, it's going to be tough because this Texas Tech team is really, really good. They do have a loss, but it was against Illinois. That game was really close. I think that Illinois is also a team where that's one of the best teams in the nation this year. They're very mature, very developed. So I'm not knocking Texas Tech for an Illinois loss. I honestly think that Texas Tech is a really underrated team. So I'm not trying to throw any shots at all at the Red Raiders, because I've been very impressed watching them play last night, watching them play all season long. I think it's going to be a tough matchup for Purdue. And honestly, this is the one I really wanted going into this Baha Mar championship game. It's going to be a fun one. Let's talk about some of the other guys, some of the few other starters that Texas Tech has to offer. Tyree Bryan is one that he had 36 minutes. He was their second leader in terms of minutes. He had 13 points, only shot at 30% from the field, but he did get to the line quite a few times, 4 times, 7 rebounds. So when you have a guard that can rebound, that's going to be good. And Tyree Bryan, he is a senior guard, so very experienced at about 6'5". He does rebound the ball, so 4.8 rebounds going on 5. That's kind of going to be where he's really going to make his mark. And someone that I would like to give a comparison from him to on Purdue's roster is CJ Cox. So kind of that specialist where you bring him out, not necessarily to be your number 1, your number 2, not even your number 3 option from a scoring perspective. But what he does give you is a guard that can really be a good point of attack defender, a guard that can chase rebounds, and a guard that gives you a good opportunity to win. Even against Memphis last night, CJ Cox made the plays late. Honestly, if CJ Cox didn't make some of those shots late, I don't know if Purdue wins that game. And really, that's kind of where we are. Texas Tech, they're going to be very talented. Purdue, very talented. If Purdue can bounce back and have a good performance, really dictate that pace, I think they'll have a good shot. I also think that Texas Tech has a good shot. It's going to be a close game, and it's going to be one that's going to be a very fun, exciting, electric environment in Baha Mar. But what you have to realize is anything can happen in Baha Mar. We don't know if these rims are going to be fixed overnight. We don't know if the floor is going to be slippery. There's a lot of variables that come playing in a ballroom, and both these teams are going to find that out. Going to be a fun one. It's going to be a good game, and tonight will be the night that we determine a Baha Mar champion. We'll talk about my prediction, who I have winning the Baha Mar title. That's next here on Locked On Boilermakers. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head on over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's go ahead and give some of my final takeaways for this game tonight against Texas Tech. I'll give my prediction, and then we'll get out of here. We're live streaming tonight. Just a heads up, live stream tonight after the Texas Tech game, so make sure you tune in here for the post-game show. It's going to be a fun one. Hopefully, Purdue gets that dub tonight. I'll give my prediction, but my main takeaway, really, in just looking at these teams preparing for this show, these teams are so similar. They really are very similar. We talked about personnel in this last segment, about how a lot of these guys, Anderson is similar to Smith, Toppin similar to TKR, the way that they play, the way that they want to get it done for their teams. But looking at the numbers in terms of team stats, points scored, average 88.3 points scored per game for Texas Tech, 88.3 for Purdue. Opposing points per game for Texas Tech, 72.8. Purdue just a little bit lower at 71.6. In terms of field goal percentage, Texas Tech is at 46. Purdue is at 48. Rebounding, 41.5 for Texas Tech, 43.5 for Purdue. So Purdue is just like two numbers better at about everything. Same with assists, 20 to 18. With blocks, they're better. But the real number where Texas Tech has Purdue beat is the steals, 8.8 to 4.5. And yes, that's a big difference. That's something that you could look at if you're potentially trying to make a case for Texas Tech winning this game and say, hey, Purdue played sloppy the other night against Memphis. And I mean, Texas Tech, they forced 8 steals a game. What's Purdue going to do? And to that, I say, let's look back to that Alabama game. Let's look back to an Alabama team that had 19 points off turnovers against St. John's in a top 5 win. And then going into Purdue, they faced off against one of the best guards in all the nation who doesn't typically turn the ball over at a high rate. And Purdue found a lot of success. They played very clean basketball. I expect them to do that again tonight in Baha Mar, because I think that Braden Smith, he's just so good at dictating that pace. Even when he has an off night like he had last night, even when he's not making his shots the way that he wants to make them, he's still efficient enough in determining the pace, making good decisions, not turning the ball over too much. It really gives you an advantage where you're able to play that clean basketball. And outside of nights like last night, it usually gives you the momentum for that offense to kind of click and for you to pull away from teams. And that's going to need to be the case against Texas Tech. If Texas Tech forces 8 steals, if they force a turnover margin where you can't climb back, there's not going to be a good chance that you're going to be able to stay in this game, because points off turnovers, they're so big. You can't give up free points, because if you think about it, that's a big swing where maybe Texas Tech, they make a basket, you turn the ball over, they score off that. That's a 4-point swing right there. And Purdue can't afford that in this game. They really need to be good about that, playing high efficiency basketball, not turning the ball over against a very talented team. Something else, limiting Anderson's ability to get inside. I'm confident in Anderson if we're able to get a good point of attack defender on him and push him out past the perimeter. I'm not totally confident in his three-point shot. I mean, he's a good shooter, but I'm more confident in him shooting the 3 ball where he's sub 40% than I'm confident in him getting inside and then forcing your defense to collapse and then him finding a look. You have to get that right point of attack defender, whether that's CJ Cox, Whether you need Braden Smith, it really doesn't matter. But find the best guy that's going to be able to push Anderson out on the perimeter and force him to make looks inside instead of forcing himself in and then making looks on the outside, because that opens up the three ball, that opens up the pick and roll. So many different things open up when Anderson is able to get downhill, and that opens up JT Toppin as well. That's going to be our last takeaway before I get to my prediction. It's going to be tough. He's an All-American. You have to find a way to limit JT Toppin. And I'm not saying limit him in terms of having him score 6 points and 3 rebounds. I don't think that's possible. To be honest, I think he's too talented of a player to allow him to force him to a bad game like that. I think that JT Toppin is like one of those superstars in the NBA where head coaches, they're comfortable if those guys score 16 or 18 points. That's a formula where you can win off that when their superstar scores 16 or 18 points, because ultimately JT Toppin does do quite a bit of the legwork for this team. He puts up quite a bit of production. If you're able to stop him at all inside, if you're able to limit him at all, I'm not saying force him to 6, but if you're able to hold him to 14, 16 points and limit him off the boards enough where he's sub double figures, say like a 16-9 game, honestly, that's fine. If you're able to hold JT Toppin to 16-8, 16-9, that's a formula that I feel like you're comfortable with winning. Whether Purdue will be able to do that, I don't know. We're going to have to see on the court. And this is probably going to be the game so far. I picked Purdue to win every single game this year. This is the game that I have the least confidence in because I think that Texas Tech is an amazing team, to be honest. I had Texas Tech winning this game preseason. I am going to shift to Purdue for this one because I just have so much faith in Purdue, their confidence in bouncing back, especially in these MTE events where they've won 4 in a row on Feast Week. I'm confident in Purdue. I'm confident in Matt Painter, his ability to motivate those guys tonight. Although I think that Texas Tech is an excellent team, I do have Purdue winning this game. I do think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a one-possession game. I think it's going to be 86-83 Purdue. It could be flipped. There is an opportunity where Texas Tech comes in and they beat Purdue, and I wouldn't be surprised. And that's not me doubting Purdue, not me saying I want them to lose, but just in reality, Purdue hasn't been playing great basketball this weekend. And I mean, you never know what's going to happen in the ballroom of Baha Mar. So you just kind of have to have that perspective in mind. But I do hope Purdue wins. It's surely going to be a fun game, and I'm glad that this matchup was able to happen. I'm especially glad that it was able to happen in the title game and not the consolidation bracket. But here we are, title game tonight. It's going to be a fun one. Make sure to join the live stream after the game for the Locked On Boilermakers post-game show. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. If you guys are just now checking out the channel, we're kind of newer here on Locked On Boilermakers, but I want to bring you every single day, daily content, Boilermaker content, and I'm grinding so hard every day to get you guys the best content possible. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for making Locked On Boilermakers your first listen today. For your second listen, consider checking out Locked On Big Ten with Craig Sheeman. He brings you the breakdowns on the most exciting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championships and every game in between. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, of course, where it's your team every day. Thank you guys, and as always, boiler up, hammer down.